Hi, this is the walkthrough for the treasure hunt game. So this is the task that was set. This is the treasure hunt. The idea of the treasure hunt is that you have a two-dimensional array, which is a grid, and in that array you put random amounts of treasure in the form of coins that the user is going to select different locations to try and find where the treasure is. Now, on the basic level, we haven't got anything other than that. We've just got you trying to find coins in a grid. When we get to the stretch and challenge task, what we've got is making it a two-player game. So a two-player game in that you play against somebody else, and it might be, there's loads of different interpretations of how you can do that. It might just be that you take it in turns to try and guess where the treasure is, and then whoever's got the most after a certain amount of guesses has got the most, they win. We've also got the addition of monsters in here. So the monsters are going to essentially be in certain squares. You can choose what to do with those monsters. You might choose it so that if you land on a monster, you don't get any more choices. That's it. You stop the game, and whatever treasure you've got is whatever treasure you've got at that stage. You might choose it to be that if you touch a monster, you get 0 coins. All your coins get taken away, and the game finishes. So there's lots of different choices. We come on to that. When we get to the tough stretch and challenge, we're coming on to a few topics that we may not have touched on yet in terms of things like objects. And we've got the objects in terms of the monsters moving around the board and eating the treasure. So we're going to come on to all of those points and we're going to code that together. Okay, so I'm going to start coding this with you. I'm just going to open NetBeans, make myself a new project. Treasure hunt game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and split this up into parts and do each part individually. Okay, so I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to copy some of the text. So I'm just going to make sure I know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to grab that part. We'll come on to the stretch and challenge parts a little bit later. Alright, so here is the first part of the task. Now, what we need to do, there's a few things we're gonna start setting up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to include in this project a few things that you may not have come onto yet in the form of global variables and methods and some things like that, just to try and make it a little bit easier for me to see what's going on. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to create the board. Now I'm going to create the board as a global variable. I'm going to make it private. Make it static because I'm not using objects in this particular project just yet, in that I'm not going to create a treasure hunt game object. If I choose to change that later, we can change this from being static. Okay, so there's two things here. I'm going to make mine 10 by 10 to start off with. The reason I'm going to make it 10 by 10, because it does say the size is your choice. If you make it too big, it's quite hard to see what's going on a little bit earlier in the time of us developing it. What we could do is we could ask the user a little bit later how big they want the board, and we can change this, and we'll certainly do that a little bit later if we fancy it. But as for now, 10 by 10 is absolutely fine. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to put 100 by 100 just because then it's harder for me to get the initial stages of what's going on with it. Okay, I've chosen to do it as strings because essentially what my board is going to look like essentially 10 rows and 10 columns looking like that. And I'm going to have square brackets in it, and in the treasure, where the treasure is going to be, there's going to be a number. Alright, and we'll just make that so that in certain positions we've got numbers. Now we'll make it look a little bit nicer than that as we do it. Alright, so I've got my board set up. Now, we've got in random positions in the array, store a random amount of coins. Okay. So that's going to be my task. Well, let's split these up as well as we're doing it. So we've got using a two-dimensional array, the size is your choice. Alright, so this is the game board. We know that because it's called the game board. Easy peasy. All right, and they're the tasks that I haven't done yet. So we've got in random positions in the array, store a random amount of coins. Now, first of all, now the temptation is just to start putting in your coins, but you want to start seeing what the board actually looks like. Now, this is a 2D array, so what we're going to do is set up the board first of all. Now, I'm going to be cheeky and put it into a method called setUpBoard. Okay. Okay, in here we're going to have to use a nested for loop because it is a 2D array. We're going to have to use a nested for loop to get through it. And what I'm going to do is just put in 2 for loops. At the moment they go up to 10, which is fine because my game board is 10. But if we wanted to change the board size, we would change these as well. Okay, so there's 2 things I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do game board. And then in location I, in location J, I'm just going to put some square brackets, empty square brackets. Now all I'm doing at this stage is printing out the board. Now this is at the moment a little bit interesting, just so I can see that this works, and then I'm going to refactor it, which means change it around a little bit. Now if I'm doing a nested array, if I'm doing a nested loop, what I need to do when I set up the board is I'm going to loop through essentially all of the columns. Then I'm going to loop through all of the rows. So in each column, loop through the row, and I'm going to set this location in the game board to be square brackets with a space in between, just one space. And then I'm going to print out the game board. Okay, so when I call this setup board, it should, if I run it, oh, build successful. That's not good. All right. So when I run this, what I should get is it looping through and printing me out my board. Okay, so that's what my board currently looks like. Now, sometimes when you click run on NetBeans, it goes a little bit funny. It might print you out like the wrong thing from a previous project. If you've got lots of projects open, loads of tabs open up here, it might go a little bit funny. So you might need to do a quick clean and build. That's the situation that I was just in. So if you do get that situation, just clean and build. I had to shut NetBeans down and reopen it for it to actually run this properly. But this is what it looks like. This is our grid at the moment. Okay, so now we've set up the grid. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually split these methods out a little bit further because we're trying to do clean code as we go through. Okay, so at the moment setup board does 2 things. It sets up the board and it prints the board. I just want it to do one of those things. So I'm going to do another method. Print board. Okay, and what I'm going to do essentially is copy this code and paste it in here, but I'm going to change it so that I'm not overwriting what's in the array. Okay, and in this one I'm not printing it out. Okay, so they do slightly different things now. So my setup the board loops through the length of the game boards in terms of the rows and the columns. Then it prints out, then it stores the square brackets. It doesn't print anything out at this stage. It just stores empty square brackets in this particular part of the board. All right, in this location, I and J. So that's all setup board does. It doesn't print anything. And now all I've done is called setup board. If I run it, it looks like nothing happens, but it does in the background. All right, sets up my board. The print board one is going to print whatever is currently inside the game board. All right, so I'm just going to show you what I mean. Let me just do game. I'm going to print the game board just underneath. All right, printing the game board. Okay, if I was to change the game board slightly, so I'm going to change it just to kind of look slightly different. I'm going to nick this line, and this is only for testing, just to show you what's happening in it. I'm going to go in location 1, in location, let's go 1 again. I'm going to put an X in the middle. All right, so if I run it now, you should see an X in the middle, and all I've done there is I've just printed the board. Whatever changes we make to the board, if we call print board, it will print out the board. Okay, so that's those two methods set up and ready to go. Now we might just want to print the board, you know, we might want to print it after somebody's had a guess and reveal a location. We might not want to print the board. It might be a case that we just use print the board for testing purposes, and we can see how we go as we go through. Alright, so we've got set up the board, print the board. I'm just going to minimise those two because we know those work at this point. Alright, if we've got any strange errors later on, we can come back to those. Okay, so we've got in random positions in the array, store a random amount of coins. Okay, so that's actually the job that we're coming on to. So we essentially, again, we want to be trying to do some clean code here. So we're going to make another method. And that method is going to be responsible for putting the treasure into our grid. Add treasure. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay. So at this stage, you might think about how much treasure you actually want to give to the people that are using your game. So how many, let's go with int number of treasure items. Let's set it to be 5 for now, and we can totally test it and change it and see how we go. Alright, so we've got add treasure. So we've got, hang on, we've got a random amount of coins, so we can't set it to be 5. We've got to actually set this to be a random number. Okay. I'm just going to set that to be 5 again just for the minute while I generate a random number. Now I've just cheated with my fix imports. I just right clicked and did fix imports. Be very careful with that, because when you're doing it, it guesses what import you want rather than you typing it in. It may guess the wrong one, and then your program might not work as you intend it to do. So just be very careful with that. Some of you will know how to do the wildcard at this stage, so you might put the wildcard in, and that way it does all of your imports for you. I'm not going to. There's no issues with doing that. I just want to make it really clear to show you what imports I'm using as I go through. Okay. So I'm going to do amount of treasure now. That's the bit I was on. So I'm going to go random dot next int. Now, this is a bit of an interesting choice that we've got to make. So I'm going to just comment it. Now, at the moment, this will generate any random number, and I'll prove it by just printing out number of treasure items. Okay. I've got to make sure I call this method. So I'm just going to put this up here. Add treasure. Alright, at the moment that's the amount of treasure that I would be generating, which to be fair is a ridiculous amount because I don't have that many boxes. So you would end up generating lots of treasure and you wouldn't know where to put them. That's a massive amount. Now I could give it a cap, and if I did something like, okay, I'm going to put a cap of there's 100 boxes, half of them are going to have treasure in, so the cap's going to be 50, and then it's going to generate me a random number between 0 and 50. Now this game, 48, you might go, that's not too bad. Most, you know, every other box has got treasure in it. But this is quite dangerous because if I keep running it, eventually it's going to give me a really low number, like 5. Well, that's a really awful game because there's only 5 bits of treasure in this entire board. It's also going to generate me a 0 at some stage because I haven't put a lower limit on it. So this would generate me any number between 0 and 49. Because it's saying 50 random elements starting from 0. So that's not necessarily great. Now if we remember our min-max formula, alright, and I'm just going to type it in as if we remember it. So max minus the minimum plus 1, and then outside of the brackets again plus min. That's the sort of thing we want to do. We want to try and enforce some sort of minimum and maximum amount. So what do you reckon our maximum should be here? Now again we might go, all right, the maximum should be 50, but the minimum amount of treasure, what would make it a pants game? Should we go 15? All right, so we're saying any number between 15 and 50. So if we run that again, we got 46, 49, 44. Lots of high ones there at this stage, 27, 50. They're all sensible amounts. You know, I've got some sensible amounts of treasure going on there. So I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to say random amount of treasure between... Now some of you might be going, hang on Julia, that's not 50, that's 49. Alright, remember how the min-max works? If I've got a +1, that gets it outside of that 0 bracket. So we're at least going to have 15 as my minimum, not 14 as my minimum, and it goes up to 50 and includes 50. Okay, alright, so now I've got a random amount of treasure. Okay, so I've got a random amount of treasure items. I'm going to go, right, okay, every single piece is a piece of treasure. So if I run it, I'm going to have to put 22 bits of treasure inside my grid somewhere. So this is my next job, and I'm not going to print this out, so I'm going to take that. That's just for me debugging. So our next job, we've got in random positions in the array, store the treasure. All right, so that's our next job. So how do we access the array? Now there's a few things we're going to do. All right, but really what we're saying here is you want to loop through the number of treasure items that you've got, because they're how many bits of treasure have you got. And every time we loop through, we want to select a random position in our array and store a random amount of treasure in them, which is a lot of me saying random over and over and over. But bear with me for a second. So I want to loop through. I'm looping through up to the number of treasure items that I've got. What I want to do is I want to find a random position. So again, we've got our game board here. All right, so I'm going to do game board in a random position. Now you saw me earlier do 1 and 1, and I put in something like a 10 or an X at the time. I think I put in an X because this is a string array. All right, so we're going to have to kind of do a little bit of a fussing around here to get in random positions and a random amount of coins. Now, the reason I've done this as a string array is because when you're running it, what happens is you have got these square brackets which kind of show you your grid. Now, you totally don't need to do it as a string array. You could do it as an int array and not do it with these brackets. You totally could do it like that. I've done it as a string array just for funsies at this stage, so we can do some int to string conversions, and I've got brackets so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so let's come back to the job at hand. So we've got in random positions in the array. Well, we know how to generate a random number. Random dot next. Now we know that what you can't do here is just leave it as whatever number you want here. All right, straight away I do that, I'm into a dangerous territory, because what will happen is I run it and I'll get an error message, array index out of bounds. Okay, now notice that it's giving you a number there. What that's doing, do you remember that massive random number I had earlier? It's now creating that massive random number in these two different squares, two different random numbers, and then saying, could you store something in that position? Well, my position, my array lists only go up to 10. So we have to put some caps on this. All right, and what this does is it says, okay, the random number is going to be 10. So the number generated is going to be any number between 0 and 9. That the positions here are any number between 0 and 9. So that works really well. Okay, so what we're saying now is loop through, and we're going to put an X in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change around just so you can see what's happening, because there's been a subtle shift in the behavior of my game at the moment. So if I click run, let me also actually, just for your benefit, print out how many numbers of how many bits of treasure I should have on the board. All right, so that bit's just for testing. All right, so what we've got here is I've said there's 49 bits of treasure. So if you were going to sit here and count this up, you should be able to count 49 X's in here. If I run it again, I got 45, I should have 45 X's. Now you notice that this has made my board look absolutely trash. Okay, let's make it look nicer for a second, and then we'll come back to it. All I'm going to do is add some square brackets around this one. Looks nicer now. Looks much, much nicer now. Okay. So at this stage we've got 21 X's, so I have got a random amount of treasure in random positions. But of course we're not actually going to find X's. We want to find money. That's what we want to find. We don't want to find X in here. So we've got to make a little bit of an interesting situation, because what we've got to do is put in some money. We've got to put in a number in here. Okay, so if I was to put something like 0, let's put a 0 for the second and just run it. It's going to put zeros into all of the different elements in here. If I was to change that, and I'm going to put something like a 7, it's going to put 7 into all these boxes, into the random boxes. We want a random amount, but we know how to do random numbers at this stage. Hopefully we know how to do random numbers. Oh, next boolean. We don't want next boolean, because I pressed tab and it suggested it. Okay, so I've got next in. Again, we need to be sensible with what treasure limit we put on. At the moment it looks trash, and it's given us minus numbers. So if we land on this one, it's actually going to rob us of some coins. We don't want that. So we need to put a cap in here. Now, interestingly, let me put 20. Because we've got to make a choice, and it's got to be sensible. If we put 20 in, it's going to make my board start looking a bit higgledy-piggledy. Alright, so we might make a choice here in terms of what number, how many digits do you want in terms of your numbers. Now I would suggest that you want all of the same digits throughout. So like if you want a 2-digit number, all of them need to be 2 digits. Or if you want a 1-digit number or a 7-digit number, just make them all the same amount of digits. Alright, now if I make mine, let's go for, if I was going to make mine a 1-digit number, if I run it, I go, well, hey, that's the amount of treasure. It all looks nice and consistent because my board looks nice. I could run the gauntlet of doing some if statements and bulking the rest of, the squares based on the longest digit. So if I had something that was 3 digits and some things that were 2 and 1, I could say, okay, there is something that's 3 digits, therefore make the spaces all 3 digits. But that just seems unnecessary at this stage. At this stage, I'm just going to veer away from that. I could do it. I'm not going to do that. This is okay, but you'd be a bit peeved if you got the 1. And if I keep running it, you're going to get a 0. You've landed on something with a number. Here you go. Here's your treasure. You get nothing. That's a little bit pants. That is a little bit pants. So we're going to change that up a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a choice here. The choice that I'm going to make is that it's going to generate, again, we're going to use our same formula as earlier in terms of the min-max. So we've got the max minus the min, plus the 1 outside the brackets, plus the min. Alright, so that's the kind of formula we're going to use. My maximum, I'm going to say, is going to be, let's go with 99. My minimum is going to be 10. Okay, and then if I run it again, alright, I'm going to sort out the higgledy. Oh, hang on a second. Wait a second. Now that's interesting. So what it's done is it's treated my numbers very strangely. You can see it's got 10 at the end. That's not a coincidence. Alright. So what it's done, because I'm using it inside a string, it's not treated that as a number. It's treated it as a number with another number at the end. I'm just going to wrap brackets around it, because what it was doing, it was treating that part separately from the plus 10. Alright, so I've just wrapped it with brackets. There we go. Bit nicer, bit neater at this stage. Okay, now you're going, Julie, what is all this? Alright, hang on a second. We've got some that all the digits are kind of kicking out the square brackets. Okay, so all of my things are 2 digits long, which means that I need to make these ones, the blank ones, 2 digits long. Alright, so when I set up the board, I'm just going to put another space in there, which should mean all of them are now consistent. So if I keep running the game over and over again, you're going to see random amounts of treasure in random positions, and everything is nice and neat because my board is nice and neat. So I've picked 2 digits. Okay, let's go back to this because I did that fairly quickly. Okay, random. Right, and we just need to make sure again that there's the same amount of spaces in here. If I've picked something that's 2 digits, I've got 2 spaces in here. If you've picked something that's 5 digits, you've put 5 spaces in here, because that way everything looks nice when you run it and you print it out, because everything looks nice and consistent. Okay, so have we fulfilled the first part? We've got in random positions in the array store a random amount of coins. Job done. All right, so far we're 3 methods in. Okay, we've done the first one. In random positions in the array store a random amount of coins, so that one's now done. All right, next task. Get the user to enter coordinates where they think the treasure is. So that is what we're doing next. This is where we're going to start playing the game. And again, we can make some choices here. The reason I've done these methods separately is just because it makes my code look quite neat. If I'd have done this all in line at this stage, I would have had lots of lines of code on my screen, and I might have to repeat things. Like if I want to keep printing the board, I might have to just keep copying and pasting this. And we don't want to do this. We can call print board as many times as we want. We're probably only going to call add treasure and set up board at the beginning. So we're going to do those two first, and then we're into the playing of the game. And we can call print board as many times as we want to call print board to muck about with it. Okay, let's go for it. Let's make a choice. What are we going to do? Let's go for, if we want them to enter coordinates, shall we do that in a separate method just to keep it all nice and neat? And let's go with user guess, coordinate user guess. I've just gone with coord user guess. Okay, that is what I'm going to call it. You might go, actually, Judy, that's a little bit, we don't know what that means. So coordinate user guess, that's a little bit better, isn't it? We know what that means now. We know where we're going with it. All right, let me move my comment down. So we've got get the user to enter coordinates where they think the treasure is. Well, to do that, I'm going to need a scanner. Now, some of us are used to calling it input at this stage. I'm going to stick with input. Some of us go with a lowercase scanner. If you want to do it with a lowercase scanner, you totally can do. I'm going to use it as input equals. All right, there's my scanner. Now, again, if you have done the imports as that, it won't cause you an issue. You won't need to do the imports part of this stage. I'm not doing that, so I'm just going to do right-click, fix imports, and then go, yes, this is the one I want. All right, there are other ones with other behaviors that we don't want. Make sure you've got the right one selected. Okay, so we've got our scanner in. Now we're going to ask them for 2 numbers. All right, so we're going to go with A. And I'm going to totally cheat because I'm going to copy it. Please type in the y coordinate. All right, so now we've got 2 coordinate guesses. All right, if we're doing clean code, that's where that method stops. All right, and what we might do is we might do something with those. We might use those later on. We've got 2 different things we want to do here. If we're doing the coordinate user guess, we essentially only want them to type in their x and y coordinates here. We can't pass back 2 things, so I can't do int and then go return x and y. That's just going to add them both together. So if I type in 1 and 1, it will return a 2. If you did a 2 and a 3 and it returned a 5, there's no way you could work out that they typed in 2 and 3 very accurately. So we want to be careful here. Now we've got some choices to make. Now we could call another method and pass these as parameters. We could do that, or we could set them as global variables. Global variables because we might use them somewhere else. Now we know that you want a tendency to not use global variables if you don't need to. So here's the situation. We need to make sure that we've got another method. So we've got get the user to enter coordinates where they think the treasure is. We now need to check if that coordinate has got treasure in it. All right, so it might be a case that we have got these coordinates. Let's for now, let's just do it with global variables because you might find that easy. And then we would change them to be local ones as soon as I have got a bit more code in them. All right, and down here, just to make sure that we're talking about the same global variables, I'm just going to take off the beginning part, so the int's on there. If I left that as an int, all right, notice that the x is green and the y is not green. That means that the y1 is a local one and not the global one. I want to make sure these are both the local, the global ones. So we're saying please type in x, please type in y. All right, so that's the situation. Let me just make sure we're calling it. All right, so I'm not going to do. I tell you what. Let's leave print board in there. Only in here for testing. Okay, so we're going to do set up board, add the treasure to the board, print the board. This is only for us so that we can see it while we're testing it, and then we're going to take a user guess. All right, now that one, I'm fairly sure that that's not going to crash, but I'm going to test it independently of those methods. All right, this is the nice thing about doing methods. You can comment the method calls out, and that way we're only going to test coordinate user guess. Please type in x. Well, if I type in a 3 and a 4, no issues. If I type in a exception. So what we want to do here is be a little bit smart. We want to make sure that we've caught any nonsense that they've given us in here. All right, so I'm going to wrap this in a try catch. Let me just scroll down a little bit. Okay, so I've just given it a generic exception. So if it kicks me out anything, I'm just going to format it so it looks nice. That should have kicked me out all of them. Let me do it again. Format. There we go. So there we go. So that format has just indented these bits so I know that that's inside the try part. Now I'm going to print out the error message. All right. Some of us are, let me go error. And then I'm going to do +E. Some of us are getting into a habit of not printing out that error message. That's actually super, super useful. And I'm going to show you why. So let me just do it again. If I click run, I'm going to go, OK, type with the keyboard. All right, so it's got error. And then here's the error, input mismatch exception. All right. You know, that for us while we're testing is going to be super useful. A little while ago, I showed you how to loop this. So if they type in something that's incorrect, it will loop it until they type in something that is correct. So let's just do that. I'm just going to do this a little bit strangely. So I'm going to do while. At the moment, while true, which means it's an infinite loop. All right. If I click run, it's just going to ask me this forever. All right. Not particularly what I want to do just yet, but we're going in a direction. Okay. So we've got catch exception E. Okay, so please type in the y coordinate. At this stage, I'm going to put break. All right. So the reason that this is going to be interesting, let's walk through it. So we're saying, okay, loop through forever. Try this code. All right. If it gets to this part, it's going to break out of the while loop. If it doesn't get to this part, it's going to loop it again. All right. Now let's see if it's given us the required behavior. Beautiful. Okay, so what that's doing is saying, please type in the x coordinate, I type in something wrong, and it's just going to continually print out input mismatch until I type in something correct, and then it's going to let me continue with it. What it might be is that when we do this error message, we also print out something a little bit more sensible. We might go, please type in, type. Please type in only numbers. That'll do. So let me just run that again. Error, please type in only numbers. Please type in the x coordinate. All right, that's a little bit more useful, and it will just kick me out if I do one wrong every time. Okay? Lovely. All right, we're not saying that those two are valid. Absolutely, we're not saying those are valid just yet, because I haven't got an x coordinate that is 2, 3, 4. So that's our next hurdle. So I've prevented you from typing in anything silly, but I haven't actually prevented you from typing in something that's outside of our range. Okay, so I'm going to then go if, and we're going to do a little bit of an if statement. And the idea is I'm going to put my break as my inside the if statement part. All right, so we're going to go if x, and we're going to go, let's do is more than or equal to 0 and x, well, let me get my cursor out of the way, is less than or equal to 9, and let's keep going, y is more than or equal to 0 and y is less than or equal to 9, because again my locations I've got between 0 and 9. Okay, so we might be a little bit more user friendly here as well, and just say anything, let's go with any number and I'm just going to copy that and put that here. All right, so I've got please type in the x coordinate, any number between 0 and 9, and then I've got this little bit down here. Okay, that looks like it's going to be sensible. So if those are valid, it's going to break. Let's just test it. Let's just test it. Please type in the x coordinate. We know it doesn't work if I type in these, so you know we could test that again. Let me go with 12, 8. Please type in the x coordinate. All right. Now let's type in 0 and a large number for y this time. All right. Okay, let's type in 0 and 0. Done. So that's successful. That's looking like it's working for me, but the error message wasn't particularly useful. So we've got please type in only numbers, and I'm going to say between 0 and 9. All right. So any numbers, number. I think that's okay. So please type in only numbers between 0 and 9. Test it once more just for me to feel happy. 10, 10. All right. 9, 0. Happy days. That looks like it's working for me. So I'm quite happy with this. Now the worst thing that some of us might do now is just go, right, we're finished. Okay. So let's make sure that we've commented just to make sure that we remember what we did when we come back to it later. So only accepts numbers 0 and 9 to match the game board size. All right, lovely. So that is a nice little method now. Okay, it's only going to, at the moment it's an infinite loop, but it breaks out of that loop if we've got a valid answer. So it'll break out the second we've got a valid answer, it'll break out that loop and then return to wherever we've called it from. Okay, so that's coordinate user guess. That one's done. We don't need to do anything more on that now. Okay, so the next thing is we need to actually check, is there any treasure in the coordinate that user guessed? Okay, so we had set up board. Let's put these back in. All right, get rid of this one as well. So we've got set up the board. We know what that does. Add the treasure. Print the board just for our benefit, and then we've got coordinate user guess. So if we run it all together now, we've got this coming up. Please type in the x coordinate, and if I type in, let's go with 0 and 0, nothing happens. That's where we've got to. All right, now we might want to not show this, but for testing purposes we totally can show this. We know that there are 26 bits of treasure now. We're happy with that, so I'm just going to go back to let's go with add treasure, and I'm going to take out this line just here because that was just for testing. All right, now that won't print the amount of treasure at the top, it's just going to put the treasure in for me. Okay, so now we've got them to type in a guess. What we need to do is check if there is treasure. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm trying to do this with as many methods as possible just to kind of separate things out. And when I say as many as possible, I mean every method should just do one thing and look after one thing, and I'm just separating the job out into multiple little subtasks. So okay, public static void. We are doing check, oh hello, for treasure. That's a sensible-ish name. That's not too stressful. Let me just do that because my hands went funny. Okay, so we've got check for treasure. So what we want to do here is we want to go, okay, let's just for now see what's in the location that the user typed in. All right. because that's going to tell us something. So I'm going to put X in here and Y in here. All right, so check for treasure. All right. Okay. So at this stage, and again, I'm just doing this so that we can work out what's happening. So we've got, please type in the X coordinate. Now, what have I got? If I type in a 0, and then I type in a 9, hopefully we're going to get 90 printed out. No, we've got a nothing. Let's try that again. All right, so let's try that once more. Oh, this one will be nice and easy because we've got 0 and 0. So I did 0 and 9 before. Let's do 0 and then 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, so now you know 85's been printed out. So the first number is which row it is, and the second number is which column it is. So we've got X going down the side, Y going up the top, just in case we were slightly confused before. Okay, so the first number is the row, second number is the columns. Just in case we forget, let's put that up here. All right, now we might also be a little bit nicer for our user. All right, because that's for us, that's for the developer. The user, when we did coordinate guess, let's just tidy up our code slightly. Please type in the X coordinate, which all right. So that tells our user which it is. So the X coordinate is the row and the Y coordinate is the column. Okay, so we've got check for treasure. We know that prints out the treasure at this stage. We know that correctly gets, and that was the point of that test, to correctly get treasure, and we go that we know something's in there. Okay, so if I go 0, 1, 2, and I go 2, 0, we've got 59. So that's, at the moment, that's getting me something correctly. Okay, don't worry that I can't do it multiple times at this stage. We'll get onto that. So we've got to do something with this treasure. All right, so if that was me guessing, I should have a score or an amount of treasure that I've got already, and you need to add that 59 to my treasure. Okay, so let's think about what we're going to need here. We might have a score for the user. Now again, I'm doing this as a global. You might think about doing this as a private one, inside as not a private one, a local one inside a method. But let's see how we go. Score. All right. Actually, I'm going to take out that equals 0, and I haven't put the word in there, so that's a bit interesting. So I'm going to set it to be 0 right at the start. So instead of setting it to be 0 here, I'm going to do it in here. So I'm going to do score equals 0. So the first thing we do when we play my game, I'm going to set your score to be 0, and then I'm going to do the rest of it. Okay. So what we've got here, we know that we're going to have to add the thing to the score. We know that at this stage, so we're going to do adding something to the score in a little bit. But I need to do something to get that piece of information from this bit of the game board. Okay, so I've got game board. We know it prints out the right thing, and I'm going to leave that there for testing. And we're going to remove it afterwards. Okay, so we're going to do score. We can't just do equals this. Now that's a rookie mistake because this is a string. Okay, now you could do an int to string conversion, and I'll show you what happens if we did that. So if we did integer.parseInt round there, this is going to look really strange. Oh no, let's do this properly. Okay, so if I now print it, all right, so what it's going to do is going to allow me to have a guess. So I'm going to go, okay, let's go with 0, 1, 2, 0, 1. 78, number format exception. All right, so that's why it's going to look strange. It's going to look ugly because it doesn't know how to deal with brackets. It's going, you've got 2 brackets there, and I don't know what's going on with these. All right, so we need to make a choice as to how we're going to do this. There are many different right answers here, but essentially all we want to do is grab these 2 bits. All right, so we want to grab those 2 bits. Let's play around with this for a second. Let's play around with this for a second. Let's do a substring. All right, so all I'm going to do here is print out a substring of it. I'm going to take this top one out, all right, because that was printing it with the bracket. So I'm going to do a run. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to guess row 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, still doesn't like it. What we've got? Oh, that's because I left my other bit in. I left my integer.parseInt part in, which of course is going to crash out. We should have taken that out. Let me do that again. All right, so I'm going to go 9. All right, that's given us a 9. That's good. It's given us the first one. Oh, all right. $71. Hey, now we're cooking. Now we are cooking. Okay, so I've got a substring of what is inside the brackets. All right, what you've noticed there is that I put in 1 and 3. I initially put in 2, and I've put in 1 and 3. If we look at that again, all right, so what I've got is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 digits. The way that that's calculated is 0, and then we haven't included 0, so we've gone 1, 2, so it's inclusive of 1, and it's exclusive of 3. Okay, so we've got the middle 2 digits, and what I mean by inclusive and exclusive is the first number is the first location, so it's inclusive of 1, but it's exclusive of digit 3, so we're saying up to but not including digit 3. Okay, now we've got that, so let's just nick that for a second. What we can do, and let's just get rid of this bit at the end, is we can plonk that in to our integer.parseInt part, and I'm just going to change it so it prints out just the score. All right, so what we're doing at this stage is we're saying, okay, the score is going to be equal to, now at this stage this is a bit rubbish, this code is a bit rubbish because I've not put score plus, which if I'd have just run that over and over, every time you made a correct guess, it would guess that whatever you've got, like say if there was 70 coins, it would overwrite the whole total rather than adding to it. So I've got score equals score plus whatever's between those 2 things. Now there's imminently going to be an issue with this, and we'll have a look at it together. All right, now what I've been doing recently is I've just been guessing ones that have got stuff in them. If I guess one that doesn't have stuff in them, boom. All right, so we've then got another thing that we need to do. We need to catch this error because we don't want number format exception. It's saying, hang on a second, we've got something here, but that's not a number. All right. So what we might do is we might see if that is empty or something like that. We might want to see if have these actually got numbers in them. There's loads of different ways of doing that. Let's see if we can do that together. Okay. All right, let's try something slightly easy. Let's go for if. Let's go for that. Dot. Should we do equals? Let's do equals. And 2 digits in it, right? So if that. Now at the moment it will say if it is that, do this code, which is not what I want. I'm going to go if it's not that, do this code. All right, let's try. Let's see what nonsense we've created together. So we know that it works if there's a digit, so let's just make sure that definitely works now. So let's go in that one, in row 1, gives us 65. Lovely. Let's do 0, 0, gives me nothing. Beautiful. So that works absolutely fine. Okay. So what we've got at this stage is we've got the user to enter the coordinates of where they think the treasure is. If they're correct, then what it will do is add that treasure to their score. All right, so that check for treasure bit works like a treat so far. Okay, what's the next bit? Oh, we've already done it. If there is treasure at this point, it gets added to the user's total. Okay. Oh, let's put that as a comment. Okay. So that's our method so far. And we've done all of those. All right, now you might be going, Julie, this game, it's pants at this moment in the game because I'm going to guess 0, 0 and you get 20. I can't keep guessing. This is rubbish. I can't keep guessing. Okay, so now we're going to make a choice of what things do you want to loop and how many guesses do you want people to have at this particular game. All right, so we know that we've only got to do this bit once, which is set the score to be 0. We're going to set up the board and add the treasure. Okay. I've got print the board, but we're only doing that for testing. We could let's put it in the game for now. Let's put it in our testing bit and we can comment it out. Okay. So we've got coordinate guess and check for treasure. These are the two things that we want to loop. All right, so it's these two bits. That's actually playing the game, isn't it? So if how many times do you want to loop? How many guesses do you want to give people? 10 guesses? 3 guesses? Let's just make sure this is all formatted nice. Let's go format. Okay, 3 guesses, 5 guesses. Okay, and then we can go, ta, da, da. Your final score is... All right. Let's go for 3, just so it's nice and easy for me to show you that it loops. Okay, so I'm going to go with, please type in the x coordinate. Okay, so I'm going to go 0, 0. All right. Please type in the x coordinate, which is the row. Okay, let me go 1, 0. Okay, 26. So my score at the moment is 26. All right. X coordinate. Let's do 1 and 1. Way, my final score is 119 because it added that one and that one together. All right. So this at the moment plays the treasure hunt game. If I got rid of print the board, you could print it there, couldn't you? You know, your final score is block, because that's kind of like rubbing it in their face. Like, these are your guesses, and this is where all the treasure was. So let's just run that once more. Please type in X coordinate. Now, we can't see the board. It's trickier this time. Let's go for bigger numbers. No, we didn't get any treasure. No treasure. Well, we got some treasure. We finally got some treasure in that, so that's not too stressful. So that is the game. This is where all my treasure was. We might print out something to say this is where your treasure was. Okay, so that is the first part of the game. You might be nicer to people. You might go, okay, how many guesses do you want? You could do some more things to make it a little bit flashier if you want, because you might ask them like, what size do you want the board to be, and then you might set these to be different things. And again, if you're going to make changes to that, make sure you make them consistently throughout. So let's pause at this stage because we know the game works. All right, and then what I'm going to do after a brief break for a second, I'm going to just one-up it so we can ask the user the size of the board and some things like that. Alright, so I've called this little bit extra housekeeping. Basically all I'm going to do is tidy up my code a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier to maintain. From things like changing the game board, if you wanted to change how many guesses you've got, or how many bits of treasure you've got, or how big the board is. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask the user a series of questions. Now, I'm aware that we've got coordinate user guess and things like that down here, which has already got scanners and things like that in it. I might just do a thing like set up the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another method. Alright, setting up the game. And what I'm going to do is setting up the game. I'm going to ask a series of questions basically to the user to set up the rest of the game. And I'm going to chuck some extra things in some variables up here and see if I can get away with getting rid of these up here and changing them to be local variables. Okay, so set up the game. Let's do a scanner. Okay. So that is my scanner. I've called it the same as the other one that I had. Doesn't matter. This is a local scanner object in this method. As soon as I've done with this method, it's going to get rid of it. Okay. So what do I want to ask the user? What size would you like the board to be? Oh, hello. Board size equals input. Next in. Okay. Now at the moment this is a local variable. I'm going to want this to be a global variable. Board size. Make that static as well. Alright, now let's just go down here. We're going to get rid of the word int. Alright, so board size is sorted. Okay. Let's make the changes that we need to for that, and then we can carry on. Okay. Now at this moment we've got the board size being set in here. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of this bit at the end. Alright, so I'm just going to copy that, Control C, because I'm going to change it later. I'm going to get rid of that bit. So I'm going to do private static game board. Notice everything's private up here. I'm setting everything to be private if they're variables. Okay, so when we come down here, we're going to do the rest of it. So let's go set another. I probably want to do that in here, to be honest. Let's go game board equals. We're going to do board size by board size. All right, so let's do that. Setting up the board. All right. So we're going to do the game board equals the board size, and the score is 0. Okay. We also need to copy this and put it in some more places. All right. So let's just go through our methods. We had set up the board, and that only goes up to 10. We want that to go up to board size. All right. So that's now going to be up to board size. What else have we got? We've got print the board. That only goes up to 10. We want that to go up to the board size. We had add the treasure. Okay. We had a cap on there in terms of the tens. So we're saying in location it only goes up to 10. We can have that going up to board size now. That's not a problem. Our board sizes at the moment are going to start from 0. So as long as I'm not playing around, some of you are thinking, all right, hang on a second. If they type in 10, it's going to be from 0 to 9. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. And I'm going to kind of add some other bits in as we go through. So let's carry on going. So is there anything else? That just generated us a random amount of coins. I think that one's okay. Coordinate user guess. Okay, so here I've said if it's more than 0 and less than, all right, we want to do board size, but we probably want to do board size -1 here. All right, now the reason we want to do board size -1 is if I put in 10, my board size is going to be from 0 to 9. So I've got to do -1 here. Just to make sure that you could either do -1 or you could just do less than, but I think it's probably easier to do -1 just because then it's easy to read. Okay, and we're going to test this as we go through. Between 0 and, let's make these instructions a little bit nicer. All right. Alright, that should print out a little bit nicer. Let me just copy that, put that there, because now what it's saying, again, if I type in 10, it's going to do from 0 to 9. Okay, so you know, that's absolutely fine. And then I've got my brackets just there. Okay, board size, yep, that's sorted. And that bit you probably want to just change as well, just to make sure the instructions when you give them to the user are fine. Okay, I'm going to come back and tidy up this user coordinate guess in a little minute or so, and you'll see why when we get there. Okay, check for treasure. Okay. Yeah, that should be okay. I didn't use 10 or anything in there. Alright, so what size would you like the board to be? Oh, straight away. Bound must be positive. Right, what have I done wrong somewhere? So it does set up the board first. Board size. It's because we haven't actually called set up the game. It's because we haven't actually called set up the game. What a rookie mistake. Set up the game and then set up the board. Let's do set up the board afterwards. Let's just nick that and put that. So the way that you call these methods, are the order that you call them are important. So I need to set up the game first, which is what do you want the board size to be. Then I need to set up the board size and then set the score up and then loop through it. So hopefully, what size would you like the board to be? I'm going to put in 5. Please type in the X coordinate. Now we need to make a few guesses here. So I'm going to type in some big guesses because it shouldn't allow me to make those big guesses. Much like it wouldn't let me put in -1s. Okay, so let me type in 5 this time. Doesn't work. That's good. All right. Now we get 3 goes at this. All right. Beautiful. That looks like it works because my board is 5 by 5. All right. Final score. That was not too stressful. Okay. So that's our first choice done. That's our first change that we're going to do in terms of housekeeping. Okay, so that was just change the game, set up the game. All right, now we might do another one, which is ask how many bits of treasure. So should we put on the map rather than in the map? All right, so we're going to do, now this is an interesting one because we had add treasure. Okay, now in here we said the random amounts of treasure. I tell you what, let's do this in a different fashion. So instead of asking the user how much treasure they want, we're going to change this to make sure that it only gives you a sensible amount of treasure based on the board size. Let's do that because that's a lot more sensible. Okay, so what's our kind of maths that we want here? So we want the maximum to be the board size probably divided by 2, right? Alright, so that's going to be our maximum. Half the amount of squares on the board are going to have that particular set of treasure in. What's our minimum going to be? Well, it depends on the board size again, and we're going to need to divide the board size by a certain amount. What shall we say here? So board size divided by 2, board size divided by 4, quarter of them, or should we say an 1/8? Okay, let's try that. Let's try that. Let's see where we get to. Alright, so I'm going to go with 6. Actually, let's print out a bit more information so we know what's going on. Let's go with number of treasure items. Number of treasure items. Let me just make sure that has stopped running. Oh, I can't even spell wood. That's terrible. I didn't even clock that before. These little things. These little things. What size would you like the board to be? Let's go 6. Alright. Oh, we've got 0 treasure. Now that's not good, is it? So let's change up what we're doing here. So let's go with we could do the minimum being a very small amount, like 2 bits of treasure. Let's see if that's made a difference. Alright, so there's 2 bits of treasure. That's still not a massive amount of bits of treasure, is it? So we're going to need to just kind of have a little bit of a think. So we're going to 10 by 10. It's only going to give us 4 bits of treasure throughout our massive map. So let me do board size times board size divided by 2. And that might give us something a little bit more sensible. Because obviously we've got the rows and the columns, 19 bits of treasure. That's not too stressful. 31 bits of treasure. That's more reasonable. If we're doing 10 by 10, probably don't want 2 bits of treasure in there though. So let's have a little bit of another think about this bit. So we've got 2 as the minimum. Let's try and do that. So now we're saying 1/4 of the squares on the map. Alright, so I'm going to start digging into fixing these brackets because we've clearly got a few issues with our brackets going on. And what I'm going to do, first of all, just to get my mind in the right frame of mind, is I'm just going to start writing out the formula. So we had our formula as being max minus min, plus 1, plus the minimum, alright, and then an extra bracket at the beginning. Okay, now it might be more sensible at this stage for me to start ripping things out. So I could just try and fix the brackets. I mean, if I was going to fix the brackets, I could come in here and start matching them up and go, okay, I've got this one matches to that one, this one matches to that one, I've got an extra one here for some reason, that one goes around that one, then I could have another one. You know, this might take me quite a little bit of time, and eventually I might go, ooh, that's still not right because I've got that bracket matching that one. Let's just save ourselves a slight bit of hassle here. We'll go min equals, and then we'll leave that there for a second, in max equals. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the maximum was this. Alright, I'm just going to take off the little brackets at this stage. Alright, what have we got? Board size times board size. Oh, too many brackets taken out. And then I'm going to nick this one and say, oh, I've got that the wrong way around, haven't I? So that is my... There we go. Apologies, brackets everywhere for a second there. So we've got the minimum being 1/4 of the board size. So the minimum amount of treasure that you're going to be able to have is 1/4 of the size of the board. And the maximum is half the size of the board. So half the size of the board will have treasure as a maximum. Now let's just sort this mess out because this turned into a mess of brackets a second ago. Okay. So again, we said the maximum. So we're going to do it just like this. All right. Essentially just like that. Because I'm going to nick it and put it in. So we've got the maximum, which is max, minus the minimum plus 1. And then plus the minimum, and my brackets are all nice and neat and matching up, so that makes it nice and easy to read, and we can run that and just see what it does. 42 bits of treasure, let's do 30. 394 bits of treasure, that's fine. What's our numbers? I did 300 there. Alright, that's a lot of treasure to find. Go with 3. Okay. At this stage it should absolutely work. Alright. We've got the adding the treasure part in. Let me just do number of treasure items. Let's make this nice and user friendly so they know as well. Bits of treasure to find. And then we're just going to leave that in there. We're not going to do that for testing anymore. Let's say that's now a feature. It tells you how many bits of treasure there's going to be. Okay, we know that that works. We know that it's based on the board size, how much treasure it gets generated. So that add treasure bit is fine. I wanted to polish up this coordinate user guess before we chuck it back in. So what we've got in here at the moment, let's have a quick look at it. What was I going to polish? Okay, yeah, so the bit that I was going to polish is making it a little bit more user-friendly. So at the moment, we've got please type in the x coordinate, which is the row, any number between 0 and the thing that they want to guess. This works absolutely fine, but we might, you know, I think this is fine. We could change it so that they type in 1 up to the board size, and then we just minus 1 off of it. So we could do it like that and then just do that minus 1. That's the alternative way round it. Because if they're guessing and they're counting, they might say, oh, we didn't, you know, we're counting from 1. So we can say any number between 1 and the board size, and that's absolutely fine. Remember that we're when we're storing it, we're minusing 1 off of it, because that way if they guess 1, we're going to go into the 0 location on our game. Okay, so that's just a little bit tidier, just for the user experience, not for us at the back end. It makes no difference for us really. Okay. So that's now good to go. Now let's go, what size would you like the board to be? Let's go for one more question. How many guesses would you like? And then we can go. This is an int, so let's tell it it's an int. Okay. And then we got number of guesses. Now I'm going to make that a global variable as well because I'm going to want that somewhere else. Number of guesses. Okay, and where I'm going to use that is I'm going to change my little loop here. So if I put that loop back in, let me put all of these bits back in. I've got that, and I'm going to loop that up to number of guesses. Okay, so if they say they want 10 guesses, they can have 10 guesses now. I'm going to get rid of this print board. So I'm only going to print it at the end. Okay, so what size would you like the board to be? I'm going to go with 10. How many guesses would you like? 1. Alright, bits of treasure to find 39. Fine. Absolutely fine. Didn't let me type in zeros because remember we're doing the minuses on that. So if I'd have typed in 0, it would have stored that as -1, which would not have been valid. Now, we could also do a little bit of tidying up on the user inputs here, because if I type in a guess amount which is ridiculous, or a string or anything like that, that's not going to be particularly sensible. So we might do a little bit of a try-catch. We love try-catches. Alright, okay, now just so that we know what we're doing here, let's format it. Okay, we're going to essentially try the same sort of thing as we did up here. So we're going to do while true. Alright, we're going to infinitely loop it while it's not valid. Okay, and then if it's anything incorrect, we're going to print out a positive. Alright, okay, so let's go for a little if statement bit now. So we're going if, and then if it's correct, we want to end it. So we're going to go if the board size is more than or equal to 2. Yeah, 1 by 1 board, that's pants. It should be, let's go more than 2. Alright, and we're going to go and number of guesses is more than or equal to, what's the minimum number of guesses? Let's go with 2. Let's tell you that both of them are going to be 2. Should be a positive number more than 2. Okay, break. Yeah, I think that's okay. What size would you like the board to be? 10. How many guesses would you like? 0. What size would you like the board to be? Okay, how many guesses would you like? Let's go with 5. Alright, bits of treasure to find. Oh, hello. This is going on and on and on. This is looping for ages. This has given us more than that number of guesses, hasn't it? So how many guesses would you like? 5. Alright, so we've got an issue going on here. Let's debug our issue. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is actually show you some debugging. Oh, it's because I'm typing in 0, isn't it? That's why. Come on, guys. Oh, what size would you like the board to be? No, I was going 10 and 2. How many guesses would you like? Oh, no, let's start this again. Right, what size would you like the board to be? 10. How many guesses would you like? 5. Let's do this again, because I typed in zeros like an absolute muppet, didn't even read my own instructions. Now let's go for it. Please type in the coordinate, which is the row. 1, 1. Lovely. I got some treasure on the first go. Super. Beautiful. Okay, so that's now our game. That's working quite nicely. We could improve it a little bit further to kind of give you instructions and things like that. So let's make 1 or 2 little adjustments. So setup game works fine. Coordinate user guess is fine. We have got this bit in here. So you let's do. You have. Let's put that here, and I'm going to basically tell the user how many guesses they've got. Number of guesses minus I. All right. Okay. Let's see how we get on with that. And there was one other bit I wanted to do. So if we've got coordinate user guess, so if they're typing in something wrong, we can go, okay, that input was not correct. Please check carefully. No, I can't even spell carefully. Alright, because that way at the end of the user coordinate guess, if they typed in 2 numbers and it's not broken, it's not going to do the catch, it's going to go, that input was not correct, please check carefully and chuck them back up. Fabulous. I might also do that in my setup game one, because I've got the same sort of thing. Okay. Check for treasure was absolutely fine. It actually prints out your score if you hit. Why don't we print out no treasure here? Alright. Alright. Right, let's see if that has made my game a little bit nicer to play. What size would you like the board to be? 10. How many guesses would you like? I'm going to go with 4 this time. Bits of treasure to find 36. Please type in the coordinate, which is the row. Now I'm going to do my zeros again. That input was not correct. Please check carefully. That's a lot nicer, isn't it? Please type in the x coordinate, which is the row. I'm going to go with 1. Please type in the y coordinate. No treasure here. Your score is 0. You've got 4 guesses left. Oh, that's interesting. So I said how many guesses would I like? 4. It's given me 1 guess so far, so I need to do a -1 off of that. So let's keep that in mind as we continue, because we're nearly done with this bit. Alright, let's do the same guess over and over. So that's 2, 3, 4 guesses. So it actually gives us 4 guesses, and that's absolutely correct. But what we want to do here is we've got minus I. We want to do minus I, and we also want to do another minus 1 off of that, don't we? Alright, let's just double check ourselves. What size would you like it to be? How many guesses would you like? 4. I'm going to go with 1. Oh, apparently I'm going to go with 4 instead. Alright, so you've got 3 guesses left. 2 guesses left. 1 guess left. Job done. That's much better. So there's one little bit that I want to do as the last little part to do housekeeping in my game here. Now the last little part I want to do in terms of housekeeping is to deal with these 2 variables. So at the moment they're global variables, which is x and y. Now you'll recall that we used those when we were doing these 2 things here, so coordinate user guess and checking for treasure. Alright, so those were the 2 places that we used them. So I've got coordinate user guess, check for treasure. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to, instead of use them as variables up the top, I'm going to use them as local variables down here. So I'm going to go int y down here. Let me just get rid of the global ones. Alright, so again we're trying to rely on local variables rather than global variables, and obviously that will break check for treasure. Alright, you can see it over here, it's got 2 places that I've used it, and it's the check for treasure one doesn't like that I haven't got access to it anymore. So what I'm going to do, now every time I play this game, if I look at my main method, every time I do a guess, I'm going to check for treasure straight away. So I'm not going to do the method call for check for treasure just here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the check for treasure at this stage in here. So check for treasure and then break. Okay. When I do the check for treasure, I'm going to pass it the 2 variables. So I'm going to pass it x and y. Alright. Let me just smarten my code up slightly. Alright. Down here, we're going to give it int x, int y. Now, all my problems are gone. Okay. So when I do my check, I'm going to do the same thing. These are x and y. These are now local variables, so they're not up the top, they're not global ones. I haven't got access to them in all of the other methods. When you make a guess, it's going to check if your guess is valid. If it is valid, it's then going to check for treasure in the location of your guess. Once it's checked for treasure, it's going to break out of this while loop. Okay. Down here, in terms of the check for treasure, I'm passing it 2 parameters, so x and y. Passing it those 2 parameters, and it will then check for the treasure in that location that it's been given x and y. Let's just test it, make sure I haven't broken anything. What size would I like the board to be? Good old 10 by 10. How many guesses would you like? Let's go with 3. There's 28 bits of treasure. We are never going to find 28 bits of treasure. Oh yes, we are so lucky. Me and you right now, we are so lucky. All right, I've got 2 guesses left. No treasure. Alright, okay, so that works absolutely fine. So again, that was just making sure that my 2 variables that were global variables, x and y, are now not global variables. So I've got some other things that are global variables. You might think carefully about those variables, where you put them. You might want to just, think about, do we need score up here? Could we have defined score in here? Could we have done this in a different way? So it might be a case that you can pass different parameters. Like it might be a case that I pass the score into the coordinate user guess. That then doesn't do anything with it but pass it on to check for treasure, and check for treasure might take the score and then add to it and then pass it back. But then that's a bit of a hassle. So you might go, okay, score might need to be a global variable. I've used it in several places. That's absolutely fine. So just question those global variables as you're going through. If they don't need to be global, don't make them global, because obviously local ones are a little bit better in terms of storage and things like that. So that is the treasure hunt game to start off with. All right, that's not the stretch and challenge parts. All right, that is the complete code for the first part, which is just that part up there.